Welcome to Next Level Play Therapy, a weekly podcast dedicated to supporting the next generation of child and adolescent therapists to provide exceptional play therapy services. We'll explore all things play therapy to elevate your work with children and adolescents using the therapeutic powers of play. I'll discuss practical tips and ideas so you can provide a transformative experience for your young clients and make a real difference in their lives. So get ready to take your play therapy skills to the next level and make a lasting impact in the lives of children, adolescents, and families. Good morning. Welcome to this week's episode of talking about all things play therapy. I'm really excited to have my guest, Liana Lowenstein, here today. She has been in the field for a really long time, and so I'm really excited to talk about a subject that comes up a lot. I know when I do trainings and supervision myself, consultation, hard to engage clients comes up a lot. And I think whether you're a beginner play therapist or a seasoned play therapist, if you're working with children and using play therapy, you have children on your caseload who are hard to engage. And so I really feel like this is an important topic. And I am excited to have Liana here sharing some of her tips and strategies. If you're interested at the end, we'll talk a little bit about some of the resources she has available. We'll do that at the end. So I just wanted to welcome everyone. I go live every week at 7 a.m. Pacific time, and I talk about all things play therapy and expressive arts. So if you find this information helpful, please feel free to share it on your social media platforms. So Liana's a clinical social worker, and she has been in the child and adolescent field for over 35 years and has helped thousands of child and adolescent therapists use strategies that work. And I can attest to that because I have several of her books and I have also attended her trainings. She's an internationally recognized expert with 14 books for mental health professionals all over the world. And if you have been in the play therapy arena for any length of time, the likelihood you have at least one of her books is very high. So welcome, Liana. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you.
Hey.
Be here.
So I don't know if you want to tell the audience a little bit more about you, things that I didn't hit on, and then we can dive right into the topic today.
Well, thank you. I'm really honored to be here, and I love your work as well. And this is such a wonderful resource that you offer therapists all over the world, this live stream that you do. Like you, I'm very passionate about play therapy. So happy to get into this topic that we're going to talk about around working with hard to engage children.
So what do you think are some of the reasons children can be hard to engage in the play therapy process? I think that's one of the things, especially new play therapists, oftentimes are not sure what's going on, especially new therapists who are struggling with imposter syndrome tend to believe that they're doing something wrong. And then they tend to worry and not necessarily know what to do. But I think even seasoned professionals, like sometimes I even get a little off kilter because I'm like struggling to figure out why this child is having a hard time engaging.
Yeah. Well, I do think that it's a somewhat common struggle that we encounter. Again, as you just said, whether you're beginning in the field or have been in the field for quite some time. But when a child is hard to engage, that reluctant behavior is always communicating something. So before we get into what the child's reluctance might be communicating, I want to say that it's not just the child. So when the child is harder to engage, there could be other things unrelated to the child that might be going on. For example, there could be family factors. The family feels that, we don't talk about our private stuff with the therapist and has maybe somehow either directly or indirectly communicated that to the child.
That's a really good point.
Right?
Yeah.
Or societal, like, maybe there's a stigma. Maybe this is a play therapist who's going into the school and the child is embarrassed and feels like, oh, if other kids see me, like there's a stigma around seeing a counselor or a therapist. There could be therapist issues. If the therapist is really beginning in the field, maybe it's just their own anxiety, or
that's a really good point.
Working with a really tough situation and they're not really equipped to deal with the issue. And so that can contribute to the atmosphere of a kiddo who's harder to engage. And then there are child issues like, maybe the child's reluctance is communicating, I don't trust you, or I'm not ready to deal with this really hard stuff. Or you'll think I'm really weird or crazy if I tell you what happened. Or I have a secret I'm nervous to share, so I'm just going to not say anything. Or this is boring. Or especially for neurodiverse kids, I lack the capacity to articulate what I'm thinking and feeling. So those can be some of the reasons underlying a reluctant kiddo.
Yeah. Those are really good things to think about. I always think about those things in terms of case conceptualization as well. In the very beginning, one of the things that I talk about all the time, because I think is something that we don't talk a lot about in play therapy, which is do your information gathering at the beginning and kind of explore all of those things that you just talked about. And as we're forming our case conceptualization, then that's also going to help us think about all of those things that you just mentioned, for sure.
Yeah, and that's really important. And also important to keep in mind that assessment is ongoing.
Right.
And so you can have a child who may be actually really easy to engage initially, but as you, if you're working in a more directive therapist-led kind of approach or model, as you get into dealing with the child's maybe main presenting issue, for example, let's say sexual abuse or trauma of some kind, maybe that's at that point when the child shuts down and is harder to engage because they don't want to talk about it, they don't want to deal with it, right? So yes, case conceptualization at the outset is so important. So I'm glad you mentioned that, but we also need to be also tracking that as we go along.
Absolutely. You know what? I just realized I forgot to tell people, those of you who are watching, we would love to know who's here. So go ahead and post your name in the comments, post where you're from, what population you work with. If you have questions for today, what I do want to caution about is we don't want to get into really clinical issues as much as like staffing cases. That's not the purpose of this. We also want to be mindful of client confidentiality. So if you want to ask kind of a general question and not necessarily client specific, just so we can maintain that client privacy. But we'd love to know who's here. Post your name in the comments, where you're from, and any questions more general that you might have. And I also want to have a disclaimer. So my dogs are in my office and you may hear some weird sounds in the background. So I remember listening to one of my live stream replays a while back, and I was repurposing some of the video, and I could hear my dog moaning in the background as they were like rolling over the ground. So I always like to make sure people know, if you hear weird sounds in the background, nothing weird is going on behind me in my office. It's my dogs being knuckleheads. So yeah, I think that's really important to consider, not only what might be going on for the child that's more child focused, but like you said, I think we have to consider the child within context of their environment and what might be going on in their environment. Forgot to show my fancy little banners here. So if you're, what we've been talking about is how to engage challenging children in play therapy. and why some children might be hard to engage. And one of the things that you said, Liana, that I really, really like, and I usually try to make sure to bring this up when I'm doing consultation and supervision. What we often hear, oh, the client refused. Oh, they were being defiant. And I like to challenge people to rethink that in terms of reluctant, because that reluctance is telling us something.
Yes.
They're not trying to be a pain in the neck. They don't really want to be a pain in the neck, but the behavior is telling us something is going on. And so rather than use defiant and refused, maybe we want to think about it in terms of reluctant and what might be some of the reasons they're reluctant.
Right. Also, I think it's important to reframe this whole issue, because I think that when a therapist is thinking, oh, this child is reluctant or resistant, that causes a lot of anxiety.
Yes.
But if we can reframe it as actually a really normal and I think healthy part of the therapeutic process, like it's actually very normal and healthy for the child to be reluctant to talk about really painful stuff.
That's a really good point.
Right? So if we can reframe it, I think it takes the power out of it and hopefully eases some of the therapist's anxiety about it.
I think that's a really, really good point, because one of the things we also want to do is look at children with a developmental lens of what is typical at different developmental stages, as well as from a child's point of view, grown-ups rule the world. And what are their experiences with grown-ups? And maybe they're more anxious around grown-ups, and that trust is really important to develop. And thinking about that, why a child might be hard to engage. I once had, this was a couple of decades ago now, I once had a child that would sit way on the other side of the room back to me and would not let me engage with the child. And I think that you're kind of thinking about it that way in terms of that child is communicating something.
Yeah. What a really profound way to communicate. Right?
Right?
And that could be communicating a whole bunch of different things.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And for the therapist, kind of recognizing there are a variety of reasons, not taking it personally, and really
kind of being curious, right?
Absolutely.
I wonder what that's telling me.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. Yes, being curious. So what are some creative ways you have found to engage some of these challenging clients or challenging kids?
Well, I definitely want to share a few creative ideas. But before I do that, I want to just say that relationship.
100%.
And the use of ourself as, in terms of what we say, how we say it, our tone of voice, our facial expression, all of those components and how we use ourselves to build that rapport. So that is the most important, because none of these techniques that I'm going to share in a moment are going to be effective really unless we are using ourselves in an appropriate way and really fostering, that rapport, warm, friendly, respectful presence. So that's first and foremost. And then just a couple of ideas I want to share. We don't have a lot of time, but just a few tidbits I want to give people. So, we all love playing games, right? Adults love playing games, kids love playing games. So I think if we can, introduce an engaging therapeutic game, that can lower the threat level of what we're talking about and help the child be able to more readily verbalize their thoughts and feelings. So one game, I call it the red or black card game, and all you need is a deck of cards. And the child picks a card, and if it's a red card, then they answer a question, and if it's a black card, then maybe they get to ask the therapist question. Or if you want to use reinforcers, I often use beads and Lego. So when kids answer a question, they can earn either beads or Lego, and they get a Ziploc bag in their first session. And at the end of therapy, in their last session, they get to make something out of all the beads or Lego that they collected.
So cool. That's awesome. I love that idea.
So if you're going to use reinforcers like that, then, if they pick a red card, then they answer the question, they get 1 Lego. And if they pick a black card, they answer the question, they get 2 Lego or 2 beads. And questions, you can gear the questions to whatever the presenting issue is, starting with really easy, just rapport building stuff. What's your favorite color? What's your favorite animal? What's your favorite snack food? And then move into feelings questions. Say something that makes you feel happy. Say something that makes you feel sad. Say something that makes you feel scared. And then move into specific questions around why the client is coming to see you. Like, if it's divorce, tell about how you felt when you first learned your parents were splitting up. So that's one technique, playing a fun game. Another technique or tip is to use strategies that don't rely on the verbal. Because when kids are reluctant, they may just kind of shut down and may not be able to verbally express. Either they may not have the capacity, if it's a younger child or neurodiverse child, they may struggle to verbalize. So if we can rely on strategies that that aren't so verbal oriented, that could be helpful. So another favorite technique that I often use, and this is from a art therapist colleague of mine, called messages in art.
That sounds fun.
You bring in a whole bunch of different art supplies and like lots of different kinds of things that go beyond just coloring. So glitter and colored feathers and sandpaper and cotton balls, all kinds of different things. And you invite the client to create something using whatever art supplies they want, and then you can give them a directive. Create a picture with these art supplies that show your favorites, or create something with all these art stuff that show a problem or a worry that you have. So that's another technique. And then another technique is often kids are really anxious to talk about themselves, but they can deal with their own issues vicariously through a character in a story. So bibliotherapy. I mean, as play therapists, we often use bibliotherapy, right? And there's books on like any topic.
Yeah.
And it's and just reading the book in and of itself is therapeutic, because the client then realizes, hey, I'm not the only one that feels this way, right? And reading a story about that's related to their main issue, or watching a video clip of from a movie about that relates to the client's issue. There's also TED Talks. I love using TED Talks, especially there's some great TED Talks by kids.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, awesome stuff. So let's say you're working with a teen who's really shut down.
Yeah.
Watch a TED Talks by a teen talking about an issue that the teen is really struggling with. Well, that's a great way to help the teen open up.
That's awesome. And, one of the things that I think is really helpful, I know this has been really, really helpful to me, because like when I'm working with really young kids, I'll use child-centered play therapy. But when they get a little older, I do go more into prescriptive mode. And I think having some strategies that we can use, which is one of the reasons why I have loved your books, is like even when I'm doing family play therapy, I will go in, and there's so many activities that you have in your books where we can plug them in to our theoretical model. And that's one of the things that I've really found outside of child-centered play therapy. Most of the other ones, and I say most because there may be one or two other ones. I doubt it. And I think outside of child-centered play therapy, whatever theoretical model you're using, you can, I've found your books to be super helpful to go in and find different activities that fit with my style.
Thank you.
As well as meets the clients.
Yeah. I do want to say though that, people, who come to my trainings or who who are using my books get really excited about the techniques. And of course, I'm thrilled about that. But the techniques are not the therapy. They are tools to facilitate the therapeutic process. So I always like to emphasize it's not the technique that's going to be the therapeutic intervention. It's what you do with the technique that's going to make it therapeutic. So it's how you introduce it, how you process it, asking open-ended questions, or the client says something in response to the activity, and then it's how you validate and normalize, how you take an activity or a skill taught the client through this activity and help the client think about, well, how might I use this at school or at home? So I really want therapists watching this live stream to think about, what can I do to really take this technique to the next level and use it in a way that actually is going to be therapeutic.
Yes, I love that you said that, because I think that's, I don't know, you probably find this in your trainings as well. I know, because I do a lot of consultation and supervision as well. People want, the focus is, what's the newest and latest new shiny tips and trick for an activity. And what you said is really what creates quality play therapy experiences for the children that we're trying to help. One, you definitely mentioned relationship. We need to create that therapeutic space, especially for the hard to engage kids, because they're not, we know from neuroscience that kids can't engage their social engagement circuits, which allow them to access play circuitry, until their threat circuits are deactivated. Right. If they're hard to engage, it's likely, I say likely, but it's a high probability that it's a thing, that they don't feel safe, which is what you're seeing in the hard to engage, is the behavior saying, I don't feel comfortable, I don't feel safe, I'm not ready to fully engage in this process yet. So
yes, or right, if we think about this from the kind of neuroscience approach and the bottom up approach, yes. If you start with an activity about talking about feelings, well, you're started up here, and the client, they need to really just regulate. So, maybe starting with some, breathing or other things that are going to just help soothe the physiology that the child is struggling with. So that's also really important, that play therapists be neuro-informed.
I love that you said that too, because I think sometimes we try to go cognitive first.
Yeah.
When kids aren't there.
Yes.
And maybe they're not able.
Yeah.
So when we're thinking about those techniques and the strategy or the approach that we're using, we're also thinking about where are they in the change process, and this child's wiring and developmental stage of we have to go bottom up first. Mm-hmm. So if I'm going to be thinking about the intervention, one, what theoretical model am I using, and how am I grounding that in that model within the context of the relationship, based on what the child needs at this point in time to help them at this stage.
Yes.
That's a really great point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, any more? I don't know if you wanted to share maybe another tip. I know the audience really finds those helpful.
Yeah. So let me share another tip. I think sometimes shifting modalities can be really helpful. So shifting from seeing the child individually to family. And I know I don't have to sell you on this, because you're like me, very systemic thinking.
Yes.
And I think that when we just work with the child, we can do this much. And when we expand and work with the whole family, we can do so much more.
Oh, absolutely.
And when you've got a child who's really tough to engage, sometimes when we shift the focus away from the child or the identified patient, the child is the problem, and work with the whole family, that can often really counter some of that resistance or reluctance. and make our intervention so much more impactful when we involve the whole family. So, and this is where I love your work around attachment-centered family play therapy. So important. And there's lots of different ways to engage families in play. So, yes.
We have one comment. Let me get to, so we have, welcome, Cathi. Cathi says, I had a young man sit behind a chair and cover himself. Yes, I've had those as well.
And isn't that communicating? What a message, right? What a message. Is that communicating? Again, I'd be curious, like, I don't want to be here. I'm totally freaked out about being here. I'm going to hide myself so I don't have to talk to you. You can't make me. So he's self-soothing. So I mean, there's so much that could be going on for that little guy, and we want to really take a gentle, curious approach with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I wanted to just kind of share one other strategy that I used with it was a little girl who was 6 who the referral, the main referring reason was she had a phobia of needles, and so coming to see me for some CBT around the needle phobia, but she wouldn't even come to the session. So we had scheduled the session. She refused to come, really anxious. And so I did a milk and cookies Zoom meet and greet. So I had mom set her up with some milk and cookies.
Great idea.
And we just, we had a quick Zoom sessions via milk and cookies. And then I said to her, so when you come to see me, we're going to play something called the What's in the Bag 20 Questions. I want you to pick something from home. It could be anything you want, but as long as it's not breakable and can fit in a bag, and something that I'd recognize, like something that I have no idea what it was, but you get to pick, put in the bag and bring it to session. And we're going to play a game called What's in the Bag 20 Questions. So I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, try to guess what's in the bag. So it got her real excited about coming to see me because she, got to pick what she was going to put in the bag, and then excited about to play the game, excited about, am I going to be able to guess what's in the bag with my questions? And it got her in. So sometimes we have to really think outside the box when we're working with kiddos who are highly anxious about even coming to see us.
That's I get asked that question a lot as well. So I love that idea because you're meeting them where they are. And now one of the silver linings out of the pandemic in the mental health space has been the more proficient use of teletherapy.
Yes.
And that's one way to be able to meet the child in the child's home
where they feel safe, in the rapport building process where they feel safe, where they have control. And it's a really nice way of building that initial connection in that way.
I love that. That question comes up a lot, especially parents aren't sure if they really are. Because there are kids that parents have a really hard time getting them to come to therapy, sometimes even the teenagers. But even if you use that with teenagers, you might have to do a couple sessions Zoom, and with the goal being getting them into your office. Yes. And kind of building that bridge, which is essentially what you're talking about, is creating that bridge to get them to come in person and to ultimately engage in the change process while you're establishing trust.
Yes.
Because for teenagers, they may not want to talk about things that are painful and overwhelming and make them feel uncomfortable. So kids know they're coming to therapy because something's not going right.
Right. And they feel real anxious about the whole process.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great tip. So why don't we, so I wanted to give people an opportunity to know more about what you're doing, how they can take advantage of some of your free resources that you have and some of your books. I'm going to, on the bottom of the screen here, you'll be able to see the website for Liana, where she's got some free resources and discounts on therapy books on her website, which is lianalowenstein.com. And if you hop over to her website, let me get this to, there we go. You can get some discounts for her books. There's the code available. We're going to post in the comments a link over to Liana's website. You can get her newsletter by heading over to her website and order some books. And there's a ton of resources and trainings. There's a ton.
And a free ebook. There's also, I've tried to kind of really provide a hub of free stuff. So there's a free ebook of assessment and treatment techniques developed by child and family therapists from all over the world. There's also articles for parents, articles for mental health professionals. So yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, because I do a lot of consultation, at different trainings, your name comes up a lot, or people will direct them over to your website and they go on and on about all the awesome stuff that you have available over there. So any of you watching during the live stream today, or if you're watching on the replay, I really want to encourage you to hop over there and take advantage of some of these awesome resources. And check out some of Liana's trainings.
Thank you.
All right. Well, it was awesome having you, Liana. A great discussion.
Thank you for having me. Fun.
I know. I always love nerding out with other play therapists who are passionate about play therapy. I could go on and on. It's like my favorite topic. My husband just shakes his head and he's like, oh.
I'm a fan of your work too. So it's always nice chatting with like-minded professionals. So thank you for all you do.
Absolutely. And any of you, if you found the information helpful, please feel free to like it and share it on your social media platforms.
Spread the word.
Exactly. Bye for now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Next Level Play Therapy. I hope you found the discussion valuable and gained new insights and ideas to support your work helping children, adolescents, and families heal. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Your feedback helps to improve and reach more people who can benefit from this information. Remember, play therapy is a powerful tool for healing and growth. Whether you're a new play therapist or experienced, I encourage you to continue your learning journey to unlock the potential of play in your own work and relationships. If you have any questions or topic suggestions for future episodes, I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on social media and visit my website at Renewing Hearts Play Therapy Training to stay updated on upcoming episodes, trainings, and resources. Thank you once again for listening to Next Level Play Therapy. Until next time, keep playing, learning, and growing.